So the big question is, can we integrate Western tools like functional magnetic resonance imaging, brain imaging technology, and ancient Eastern traditions that lead to different ways of exploring and using and understanding mental processes? Can we bring these two together? A full explanation of the phenomena of social anxiety or mindfulness meditation, really, in its fullest explanation, would involve all these different levels of granularity, going from genetics to molecules, neurons, neural circuitry or brain systems, and then cognition, emotion, and behavior. Here, for this talk, I'll be focusing just on what's in the black box, which is how neuronal circuits are related to specific ways of thinking, emotions, and behaviors. Here, what you see on the left is a 3 Tesla magnet. Not necessarily the most comfortable situation for a person with social anxiety, but definitely an incredible tool. And on the right, you see Richie Davidson and His Holiness the Dalai Lama talking about how you use this technology for looking at brain function. And just quickly, when we think about what is the dependent variable and how do we derive it in functional brain imaging, fMRI, well, while you're lying in the scanner, there maybe will present a negative self-belief, like people think I'm socially incompetent, or people think I'm socially a fool. So reading this belief will trigger firing in specific sets of neurons that then lead to activation across distributed neural circuitry involved in reading, linguistic processing, view of self, emotional reactivity, for example. And then, as neurons fire, this sends a signal for delivery of more oxygenated hemoglobin to places where neurons are firing actively. So this leads to an increase in cerebral blood volume, cerebral blood flow, the delivery of oxygenated hemoglobin, and this is the basis of the BOLD signal, the blood oxygen level dependent signal. And by doing a lot of statistical analyses and signal processing, we then derive, in color-coded maps, an index of neural activity, and in this case, for example, left amygdala activity in response to negative beliefs. So this is a very quick primer of how we derive the dependent variable in functional brain imaging. What might be the brain bases of psychological mechanisms that mindfulness will impact? Well, we've been proposing that attentional processes, emotion regulation, and self-view might be impacted by mindfulness meditation. And how can we develop tasks that will actually tap or probe the brain systems that support attention, emotion regulation, self-view? Again, as I said yesterday, some neuroanatomical models of emotional reactivity and regulation have been inspired by wonderful work by Mary Phillips, Helen Mayberg, and others, so that for social anxiety, in a social situation, the affective state of fear, anxiety, arousal is rapidly triggered, instantiated in limbic and paralimbic brain structures that support emotional reactivity, sending a signal of threat upstream, and then triggering regulatory systems to then exert top-down regulation, to either increase or decrease the trajectory of ongoing emotional processing. Additionally, here is also the importance of the view of self and language. Clearly, as we use cognitive reappraisal, this is actually mediated through our linguistic processing. And this whole process is within the context of how a person views themselves, how rigid or fluid a person sees their own abilities and their view of self. So how might we create a task to begin to look at this? Well, one task that we use is the following, going from left to right, an autobiographical social situation, presenting the person's own script of a painful situation to remind them of this social anxiety. And then, in red, presenting them one at a time their own negative self-belief and asking them to spin and to consider how this negative belief is true about me. for about 12 seconds, and then a rating to ask people to rate how negative they feel right in the moment. And then we've trained them on different regulation strategies. So here, there can be attentional focusing, which here we've operationalized as shifting attention to the physical sensation of the breath as you breathe in and you breathe out. As a control condition, we also have an attentional distraction, which in this case, we operationalized as counting backwards from some 3-digit number that we put on the screen, counting backwards by ones. And all of this is while the negative belief is still present on the screen. And then thirdly, cognitive reappraisal as a comparison condition, thinking form of emotion regulation, where we ask people to reinterpret the meaning of the negative belief to make it less negative. So these are 3 different methods, and of course there are other methods for emotion regulation. And then finally, on the right, we ask people to rate their negative emotion in the moment to see the effect, at least subjectively, of using these 3 different methods. And cutting to the chase, behaviorally, what we have found is that mindfulness meditation enhances all 3 forms of emotion regulation. The red bars are pre-MBSR training, pre-mindfulness training. The blue bars are post-mindfulness training. And what you can see is the negative emotion ratings are reduced significantly from pre to post mindfulness training for cognitive reappraisal, attentional focusing on the breath, and also for distraction. So one key thing to notice here is that all 3 forms of emotion regulation are enhanced by mindfulness training.